I am the most miserable man on the internet. 3 years in the industry. While others sell smiles and sparkling charm, I market my own gloom. The public calls me dramatic, a fraud, a desperate attention seeker. My agent begs me. Man, can you stop playing the tortured artist every time you're on camera? Your follower count is cratering. My parents urge me to walk away. We have enough money. Just quit. My girlfriend sent me one final text before she blocked my number. I love you, but I can't build a life with a man who doesn't know how to smile. I ignored them all. Not because I wanted to cultivate some dark, moody persona for the aesthetic, but because of a curse. Before my grandfather died, his skeletal fingers clamped around my wrist like a vice, whispering a terrifying prophecy. Before you reach adulthood, you will face 18 deadly trials. At first, I didn't believe him. But after surviving one brush with death after another, year after year, the skepticism burned away, leaving only cold, hard certainty. Now, 17 of those trials are behind me. The shadow hanging over my chest has finally begun to lift. But a week before my 18th birthday, my agency suddenly signed me up for a wilderness survival reality show. Beck, what is the big deal if you let Cyrus borrow your survival pack? My agent, Gideon, stood in the doorway of the green room, his hand outstretched with effortless entitlement. I pressed my back against the cold, unyielding drywall, my fingers white-knuckled around the waterproof black canvas of my pack. This is my personal gear, I said, my voice flat, devoid of warmth. According to my contract, I don't share. Can you lose the corpse face for 5 minutes? Gideon's patience snapped. He took a sharp step forward, reaching for the bag. The internet is tearing you to shreds for being a selfish prima donna. This show is your chance to clear your name. Don't you get that? I didn't move an inch. I merely pivoted, letting his hand grasp empty air. Clear my name? In my playbook, public relations didn't matter. Only survival did. Next week, I would turn 18. The final trial my grandfather warned me about was looming, a guillotine suspended by a thread. Getting thrown into a tropical rainforest for a survival show at this exact moment felt less like a career move and more like a carefully orchestrated execution. There was no way in hell I was parting with a bag I had personally inspected 12 times. Gideon, please don't force him. The voice was bright, clear, and dripping with performative warmth. Cyrus Novak, the golden boy of the network, stepped into the room. He was dressed in pristine, high-end technical outerwear, his face, the one fans routinely called the human sunshine, pinched in a look of perfect, sympathetic distress. My pack got lost in transit, but it's really fine. Even without gear, I can manage in the jungle. I'll make do. He walked over, looking up at me with eyes so earnest it made my stomach turn. Beck has been struggling, and he's always so heavy. He needs these things to feel safe. I want him to have them. Gideon's face softened instantly, morphing into a mask of maternal concern. Cyrus, you are far too good for your own good. You're about to shoot a blockbuster film with an Oscar-winning director next month. If you get hurt out there, who pays for it? Gideon whipped his gaze back to me, eyes spitting venom. Beck, I am telling you one last time. Give him the bag. And I'm telling you, I replied, my voice dropping to a near whisper, no. In the blind spot where the production cameras couldn't reach, a flash of pure, venomous malice crossed Cyrus's eyes. It was gone in a fraction of a second, replaced by a gentle tug on Gideon's sleeve. Gideon, let it go. I know Beck has some resentment toward me, he thinks I took his spots, his endorsements. But I've always admired him. Everyone drags him online, but his mental strength is incredible. He just does what he wants. The words were wrapped in compliments, but each one was a calculated strike. He was framing my boundaries as petty jealousy, and my caution as sheer obstinacy. Sure enough, the crew members lingering in the hallway began to whisper. Jesus, Beck is unbelievable. No wonder his girl packed her bags. Cyrus is being a saint, and Beck is still acting like a sociopath. Wait till the live stream starts. The chat is going to eat him alive. The whispers floated through the door, sharp and clear. But my expression didn't change. I survived my first 17 trials in the quiet spaces of other people's mockery. When I was 6, I refused to board the school bus. My parents whipped me for it. 30 minutes later, that bus plunged off a mountain pass. When I was 13, I refused to eat a slice of cake my cousin handed me. The family called me ungrateful and rude. The next day, the cake was found to be contaminated with rat poison. So no, I didn't believe in human kindness. I didn't trust smiles. I trusted the anti-venom, the broad-spectrum antibiotics, and the 3 distinct tactical knives packed neatly inside my bag. Cyrus, stop coddling him. Gideon snapped, lunging forward to wrench the bag from my hand. He's handing it over today, whether he likes it or not. I caught Gideon's wrist. I didn't shake him off, I just squeezed, my fingers finding the pressure points with clinical precision. Gideon gasped, a sharp yelp of pain escaping his throat as his grip failed. You touched me, he hissed, cradling his wrist, staring at me as if I'd grown a second head. This bag is my life, I said, locking eyes with him. Anyone who touches it gets hurt. Cyrus immediately rushed to Gideon's side, wrapping an arm around his shoulders, his eyes wide with a perfect mixture of shock and heartbreak. Beck, that's enough. Gideon was just trying to look out for the production. How could you be so violent? Just like that, he branded me the loose cannon. The aggressor. I looked at his flawless, lying face. Cut the act, I said softly. Beck. Cyrus's eyes welled with tears, his shoulders trembling like a startled fawn. I honestly don't know what I did to make you hate me this much. If it's about the Best Newcomer award. I'm sorry. I really am. He bowed his head, a gesture of profound, submissive apology. And right at that moment, the door swung wide. The camera crew stepped in, their lenses catching the final frame of his sorrow. The live stream was officially live. In seconds, the chat overlay on the production monitor turned into a blinding blizzard of hate. Oh my god. Why is our sweet Cyrus bowing to that freak? Is Beck terrorizing people again? Why is he still employed? Cancel him. Cancel him now. I can't stand his miserable face. Cyrus is too pure for this world. My heart is breaking. Seeing the red recording light, Gideon leaped into his role. He cradled his wrist, wincing with a look of stoic endurance. Beck, we all know you're going through a dark time. We know about your depression. But Cyrus has no survival gear. The jungle is lethal. How can you sit there and watch him go in unprotected? It was a brilliant trap. He had just painted me as a cold, calculating monster to millions of live viewers. I turned to the lens. My pulse was steady. My voice held no tremor. The contract states that the production team provides standard gear. If a participant loses theirs, it is their responsibility to request a replacement. My bag contains specific medical supplies tailored to my physiological needs. If Cyrus needs gear, the network can overnight him a set. This is a cheap attempt at emotional blackmail to steal private property. My logic was airtight, but logic is useless against a mob. It's just some medicine, you psycho. If anything happens to Cyrus, your life wouldn't be enough to pay for it. So selfish. Why is this trash still on our screens? Cyrus wiped an invisible tear from the corner of his eye. It's fine. I don't blame Beck. I'm a man. I can take care of myself and look out for the others. He turned to the camera, offering his signature, heart-melting smile. Please don't be mean to Beck, everyone. He's just scared. With a few sentences, he cemented his status as the brave, forgiving martyr. The director's voice crackled urgently through Gideon's earpiece, demanding we move. Within the hour, the 6 of us were packed into a helicopter, flying toward the dense, suffocating green canopy of the rainforest. The roar of the rotors was deafening. Cyrus sat directly across from me. When the camera panned toward the window, he caught my eye, his lips moving silently to form 4 distinct words. You are dead meat. I stared back, my expression flat. I reached down, my thumb brushing the tiny micro-tracker concealed inside the cuff of my sleeve. 17 trials had taught me one fundamental truth. When someone shows you who they are, you don't argue. You map out their path to destruction. The helicopter touched down in a muddy clearing, and the nightmare began. Our first task was setting up camp. Cyrus immediately went to work, embodying his sunshine boy persona. He took on the heaviest branches, helped Mallory, a rising starlet who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, pitch her tent, and kept everyone laughing. The camp was thick with praise for him. Cyrus is literally a lifesaver. I know, right? Unlike some people who just sit under a tree holding their precious little bag like a security blanket. Mallory threw a disgusted look my way. I ignored her. My eyes were busy scanning the topography, calculating the potential angle of a mudslide if the looming clouds decided to burst. This was my survival protocol. That evening, food was rationed. Cyrus was in charge of distributing the limited survival bars provided by the crew. He broke them into small pieces, handing them out with careful, equitable grace. When he reached me, his hand slipped. The bar tumbled directly into a puddle of thick, black mud. Oh no. Cyrus gasped, his face instantly falling into a mask of deep regret. Beck, I am so sorry. My hands are just so sweaty from the work. Here. He knelt down, reaching for the mud-covered bar. Maybe, if you wipe it off, it's still edible. We don't have much else. Mallory stood up immediately, her voice sharp. Cyrus, don't apologize to him. He didn't even try to catch it. If he doesn't want to eat, let him starve. I looked at the ruined food, then at the tiny, triumphant glint in Cyrus's eyes. Don't bother, I said. I stood up, hoisting my pack. I'm going to scout the perimeter. I walked into the darkening wall of the jungle. Behind me, Cyrus's voice drifted through the trees, heavy with feigned concern. Beck, it's pitch black out there. Don't go far, it's dangerous. I didn't look back. Because the moment I stepped out of their line of sight, I pulled down my night vision goggles. The lens flared, and I looked back at the muddy bar left in the dirt. Coating the surface of the chocolate was a very fine, pale yellow powder. I knew exactly what it was, the powdered dander of the golden fringe moth, a rare rainforest insect. Ingesting even a microgram of it would trigger a violent, acute asthmatic attack within an hour, followed by asphyxiation. My 18th trial had officially begun. The next morning, a blood-curdling shriek shattered the quiet of the camp. Get it off. Get them away from me. Mallory tumbled out of her tent, scrambling through the dirt on her hands and knees. 3 brightly banded coral snakes were coiled near the entrance of her tent, their small heads swaying, tongues tasting the humid air. Cyrus was the first to act. Armed with a thick branch, he stepped between Mallory and the snakes, keeping his voice steady and calm as he guided her back and coaxed the serpents into the thick brush. Don't panic. I've got you. Just move slowly. He looked like a hero straight out of a classic adventure film. Mallory threw her arms around him, sobbing into his chest. Cyrus, thank God. Thank God you were here. The live stream chat erupted. Oh my God, he's literally a prince. Look at how he protected her. My heart is beating so fast. He is so brave. Where is that useless dark cloud Beck? Is he still sleeping? All eyes turned toward my tent. The flap was zipped shut. No sound came from inside. Gideon marched over, slamming his fist against the fabric. Beck. Are you dead in there? Something this massive happens and you can't even bother to step out? Where is your team spirit? I unzipped the flap and stepped out, entirely unbothered. I was wearing full coverage, snake-resistant gaiters and thick canvas sleeves. In my hand, I held a small glass vial. I'm not dead, I said, scanning the crowd. But if I hadn't stepped out, you might be. I walked over to Mallory's tent, crouching down. I pointed to a faint, greasy white residue smeared along the bottom seam of the nylon. This is snake attractant paste. I looked up at Cyrus, my gaze freezing him in place. Last night, someone went out of their way to paint this around the campsite. The clearing went dead silent. Cyrus's expression faltered for a microsecond before smoothing back into his trademark innocence. Beck, what are you talking about? Attractant paste? This is a rainforest. Snakes live here. He laughed softly, looking around for support. You can't just make up wild conspiracy theories because you're terrified of the dark. Mallory chimed in, her voice shrill with indignation. Exactly. You didn't do a single thing to help, and now you're trying to scare everyone. If someone put paste out, why didn't they get bitten? I ignored them both. I held up the glass vial. Because of this. Inside the vial was a crushed green weed I had harvested from the deep brush during my midnight walk. This is vipergrass, a plant whose natural oils neutralize the paste scent. Unfortunately for the person who smeared the paste, the winds shifted last night. They ended up spreading the scent onto Mallory's tent, and mine. I kept my eyes locked on Cyrus's twitching gaze. If I hadn't anticipated this and coated my tent with the crushed vipergrass, the snakes would have been inside my sleeping bag by midnight. The weight of my words sat heavily in the damp air. Gideon stepped in, red-faced and shouting. Beck, you are officially losing your mind. Cyrus was exhausted yesterday. He slept like a log. Where would he even get snake paste? You need professional help. Cyrus took a step back, his eyes swimming with tears. Beck. If you hate me this much, just say it. But don't accuse me of trying to kill people. I just wanted to keep everyone safe. His trembling voice rallied the other male contestants. They stepped forward, closing ranks around him. Apologize to him, Beck. Seriously, he's a toxic element in this camp. We need to kick him out. I looked at the group of easily manipulated fools. No anger. No disappointment. Just cold evaluation. Apologize? I'd send him a wreath for his funeral. Believe whatever you want, I said, turning back to my tent to pack my gear. I'm leaving the group. I'll survive on my own. This was always my preferred path. Staying with these people only increased the variables of my 18th trial. Good. Go. Nobody wants you here. Mallory yelled. But Cyrus took a step forward, blocking my path. Beck, no. He looked deeply concerned, his eyes wide with noble responsibility. It's too dangerous out there alone. You won't make it. We're a team. I can't just let you go off to die. He looked at the camera lens, his expression resolute. Even if you hate me, I'm responsible for you. I looked at the disgusting display. Move, I said. Beck. Show some damn respect. Gideon shoved his way between us, standing protectively in front of Cyrus. Cyrus is trying to save your ungrateful skin, and this is how you treat him. If you want to leave so badly, fine. He pointed to my pack. Leave the group supplies behind, and you can rot in the jungle for all I care. I looked at him, my expression dead. I've told you once. This is my personal gear. Your bag has the broad-spectrum antibiotics and the water purification tablets. Mallory shrieked from behind them. The team actually needs those. Cyrus sighed, playing the peacemaker once again. Gideon, Mallory, let it go. Beck is fragile. He needs those things more than we do. We'll just have to work harder to find a clean spring. The more he conceded, the more the others hated me. It was a textbook execution of social isolation. No weapons, no direct violence, just letting the collective weight of the group crush me. No way. Gideon barked. If you don't leave the supplies, you aren't leaving this clearing. 2 of the other male contestants shifted their weight, blocking my exit path. I calculated my odds in a physical altercation. 100%. But physical violence would trigger a production intervention, and the moment the crew stepped in, I would lose control of the narrative. I would be disqualified, sent back, and my survival would be at the mercy of outside forces. I reached into my bag, pulled out the heavy plastic case of medical supplies, and tossed it into the mud at their feet. If you want them that badly, take them, I said, my voice as casual as if I were discarding a wrapper. They all froze, caught off guard by how easily I surrendered. Cyrus's eyes widened in brief surprise, which quickly melted into quiet satisfaction. He thought he had finally broken me. Beck, remember, you gave this up voluntarily. No one forced you, he said, his voice dripping with faux sweetness. I didn't answer. I slung my bag over my shoulder and walked into the green dark of the jungle without looking back. The silence of the jungle was different from the silence of the city. Here, the damp earth breathed, and every rustle of the canopy was a reminder of my own fragile existence. For 2 days, I was entirely alone. I followed the contingency plans I had spent my childhood memorizing, mapping out water sources, laying simple snare traps, and constructing a small, high-altitude shelter. It was peaceful, in a way. No cameras. No forced smiles. No Cyrus whispering poison under the guise of concern. Yet, the quiet was deceptive. I knew my 18th trial wouldn't end with snake paste or poison chocolate. The universe, or whatever malicious force had pursued me for 18 years, was just catching its breath. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, the air turned heavy. The sky bruised into a dark purple, and the clouds opened up, unleashing a torrential downpour. In the rainforest, rain of this scale is a death sentence. The clay soil quickly liquefies, and flash floods can tear through ravines in minutes. From my elevated shelter, I was safe. But on the portable receiver I had synced to the production's emergency channel, I could hear the chaos at the main camp. They were flooded. Cyrus was leading the group toward the high cliffs to the north. It was a massive mistake. The cliffs had no tree cover to buffer the mudslides, and the sheer rock face would be slick as ice. A single slip meant a 100-foot drop onto jagged limestone. He wasn't saving them, he was leading them into a slaughterhouse. And I had to go. Because the cliffs were the only route the rescue helicopters could reach in this weather. If I didn't make it to that clearing, I would be trapped in the valley, cut off from any exit. I pulled on my heavy weather gear, checked my harness, and headed straight into the storm toward the cliffs. When I arrived at the base of the rock face, they were already attempting to scale it using a single, frayed climbing rope. Cyrus claimed the production team had left it there as an emergency line. Gideon and Mallory were already near the top, huddled on a narrow ledge. Cyrus was at the bottom, preparing to climb. When he saw me emerge from the rain, his face went white. Beck? How are you here? He yelled over the roar of the wind, his voice losing its polished charm. Get up here. It's too dangerous down there. He stepped aside, gesturing to the rope. You go first. I'll spot you from below. I looked at the rope swaying violently in the gale. The rope itself was professional-grade nylon, but right where it curved over the sharp lip of the cliff, the sheath had been deliberately sliced. A clean, surgical cut. The moment a grown man's full weight hung on it for more than 60 seconds, the core would snap. Cyrus, is this your grand finale? I let out a cold, breathy laugh. Sure, I said. I grabbed the rope and began to climb. Below me, Cyrus watched, his face twisting into a silent grin of pure anticipation. When I reached the halfway point, suspended 15 yards above the rocky valley floor, a sharp, wet pop echoed through the ravine. The nylon outer layer split. Oh my God. Mallory screamed from the ledge above. Beck, the rope is snapping. Get down. Get down. Gideon roared. I didn't stop. I kept climbing. Below, Cyrus let out a frantic cry. Beck, jump. I'll catch you. But his eyes were wide, hungry for the sound of my bones breaking against the rocks. Snap. The main load-bearing core sheared completely. My body plummeted. The stomach-churning sensation of freefall took over. The wind screamed in my ears. Below me, Cyrus's face illuminated with the savage joy of a man who had finally won. But a fraction of a second before I hit the ground, I pulled the secondary release cord on my chest harness. Thwip. A high-tensile, military-grade steel cable shot from my belt, anchoring itself deep into a crevice in the rock face with a loud, metallic strike. My descent stopped instantly. The sudden deceleration jerked my spine, but the harness held. I swung gently in the air, suspended safe and sound, a foot above the jagged rocks. The ravine went dead silent, save for the pounding rain. I wiped the water from my eyes and looked up. Cyrus's triumphant grin was frozen, his mouth half open, looking at me as if I were a ghost. Using the mechanical ascender on my harness, I pulled myself up to a stable ledge near the top. I looked down at him from my high vantage point. Cyrus, I called out, my voice cutting through the storm. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you cutting the core of the line? I spat a mouthful of rainwater onto the rocks. Your little game ends today. Thunder cracked, and a flash of lightning illuminated his pale, terrified face. The golden boy's mask had finally shattered. Beck, what are you talking about? He stammered, trying desperately to cling to his innocence. The rope was old. It was an accident. How could you accuse me of that? You don't have any proof. On the ledge above, Gideon found his voice, screaming over the wind. Beck, you are insane. Cyrus let you go first out of the goodness of his heart, and you're trying to blame him for a faulty rope? Mallory was shivering, clinging to Gideon's wet jacket. He's a lunatic. Just leave him. Let's get out of here. Even now, they chose to believe the lie. To them, I was just the broken, paranoid kid who saw monsters everywhere. I stood stable on the ledge and reached into my inner, waterproof pocket, pulling out a small, black metal square. It was a military spec, all-weather recording device. Proof. I said. I looked down at Cyrus. Do you really think I left the camp just to get some peace and quiet? I pressed the play button. The device was hooked to a high-decibel, waterproof speaker. A voice, clear and cold, cut through the rain. The voice that erupted from the rugged metal speaker wasn't muffled by the storm. It was sharp, crystal clear, and undeniably Cyrus Novak's. Make sure the outer sheath looks worn, not cut. If the idiot falls 50 feet onto the rocks, nobody's going to do an autopsy in the middle of a tropical storm. It'll just look like his signature paranoia finally ran out of luck. A second voice on the tape, muffled, anxious, clearly a corrupt production crew member, replied, and the broadcast feed? If the satellite glitches while he falls, people will suspect something. Let them suspect, Cyrus's recorded voice sneered, laced with a cold, aristocratic contempt that no fan on the internet had ever heard. The chat hates him. The media calls him a psycho. When he dies, Gideon will write a tearful post about Beck's tragic struggle with mental health, and I'll cry on camera. My movie prep starts next week. I'm not letting a walking dark cloud steal my spotlight or ruin my press tour. Cut the line at the upper anchor. Just enough so it holds 40 pounds, but snaps the moment he puts his full weight on it. The recording clicked off. Silence fell over the ridge, heavy and suffocating despite the howling wind and roaring deluge. On the upper ledge, Mallory dropped to her knees in the liquid mud, her hands clamped over her mouth, her eyes wide with unadulterated horror. Gideon looked as if he had been struck by lightning. His jaw hung open, his face draining of all color until he looked like a corpse standing in the rain. Cyrus. Gideon whispered, his voice trembling so violently it barely carried. That was you. Down on the lower ledge, Cyrus didn't move. For 3 long seconds, the human sunshine stood perfectly still, rain streaming down his sculpted jawline. Then, slowly, the bewildered, innocent expression melted away. The warmth vanished from his eyes, replaced by a flat, terrifying void. He didn't cry. He didn't deny it. He simply wiped a streak of wet hair from his forehead and looked up at me. You had a directional mic hidden in the gear tent, Cyrus said. His voice had lost all its breathy, melodic charm. It was flat, dry, and clinical. On the first night. You're predictable, Cyrus, I said, my hand resting calmly on the mechanical ascender locked to my chest cable. Narcissists always monologue when they think they're the smartest person in the room. Beck. Mallory sobbed from above, her voice cracking with pure terror. Oh my God, Beck. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought. Save it, I cut her off without looking at her. Your apologies won't stop the mudslide coming down the northern ravine in 4 minutes. As if on cue, a deep, rhythmic vibration rumbled through the bedrock beneath our feet. It wasn't thunder. It was the sickening, hydraulic groaning of thousands of tons of saturated clay and uprooted trees sliding off the upper ridge, gathering momentum as it surged toward our position. The rescue choppers are turned back. Gideon suddenly shrieked, clutching his satellite comms unit with slick, shaking fingers. They said the visibility is 0. They can't land. Beck, please. What do we do? The hypocrisy was almost poetic. 5 minutes ago, Gideon was ready to watch me rot in the jungle to protect his golden boy. Now, facing absolute annihilation, his instinct was to beg that psycho for a miracle. The cliff path is dead, I said, scanning the topographical layout in my mind. The mudslide is going to sweep this entire rock face clean in 3 minutes. Our only exit is through the sinkhole cavern at the base of the gorge. It leads to the eastern ridge above the waterline. A cavern? Mallory panicked. In this rain? Won't it flash flood? It will, I said, unclipping my secondary line and securing my pack tighter against my spine. Which gives us roughly 12 minutes to clear the underground transit before the water level reaches the ceiling. Stay here and die, or follow me. I don't care either way. I didn't wait for their response. I kicked off the rock face, rappelling smoothly down the remaining 20 feet to the floor of the gorge. When my boots hit the wet shale, I turned. Cyrus was standing 10 feet away. He wasn't running. He wasn't panicking. He was looking at me with a strange, manic intensity, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his technical jacket. You really think you're going to walk out of this jungle, Beck? Cyrus asked. Softly, stepping closer. The roar of the approaching mudslide sounded like a freight train coming through the trees above us. You think having a recording changes anything? You're a pariah. By the time we get back to civilization, my legal team will claim that audio was an AI deepfake created by a bitter, washed-up rival. You won't make it back to civilization, Cyrus, I said, my voice dropping into the cold, quiet register that had kept me alive through 17 trials. Is that a threat? Cyrus laughed, a sharp, unhinged sound. It's a mathematical certainty, I replied. Look at your boots. Cyrus frowned, glancing down. He was wearing pristine, $3,000 designer trail boots, smooth soles, zero ankle support, aesthetic over utility. He was standing directly in the drainage path of the gorge floor, where the water was already swelling over his ankles, liquefying the silt beneath him. You spent your life learning how to manipulate people, I said, stepping backward toward the mouth of the dark, gaping cave entrance set into the cliffside. I spent my life learning how to survive physics. You're out of your depth. Above us, the tree lean buckled. A massive 90-foot mahogany tree snapped like a toothpick as a wall of liquid earth roared over the lip of the upper cliff. Beck! Gideon screamed from above. Gideon and Mallory came tumbling down the lower section of the path, sliding frantically on their rear ends, covered in black muck, desperate to reach the cave. Inside. Now! I barked. Mallory scrambled past me into the pitch-black mouth of the cavern, sobbing hysterically. Gideon stumbled right behind her, losing one of his shoes to the suction of the mud. Cyrus hesitated for a fraction of a second, staring at the avalanche of rock and mud descending upon the ledge he had just been standing on. The sheer force of the impact sent a shockwave of displacement air blowing through the canyon, knocking Gideon off his feet. Realizing that his polished image couldn't negotiate with physics, Cyrus turned and bolted into the cave behind us. The entrance of the sinkhole cavern slammed shut behind us under a wall of debris, cutting off the gray light of the storm and plunging us into absolute, suffocating darkness. The sound of the collapse died down, replaced by the heavy, rhythmic dripping of water and the ragged, panic-stricken breathing of 4 human beings. My leg, oh God, my leg. Gideon groaned, thrashing in the damp earth. I can't see. I can't see anything. We're buried alive. Shut up, I commanded. I reached into the side pocket of my canvas pack. Click. A sharp, brilliant beam of 900 lumens pierced the absolute dark. The tactical flashlight illuminated the damp, jagged limestone walls of the cavern. Water was already trickling rapidly along the floor, forming a fast-moving stream that was rising by the inch. Mallory was curled in a ball against a stalagmite, hyperventilating. Gideon was clutching his bloody ankle, his face smeared with grease and soil. And Cyrus stood 20 feet back near the blocked entrance, his eyes wide, his hands trembling, not from fear, but from insurging, volatile rage. Give me the flashlight, Cyrus said. His voice was no longer that of the Sunshine Boy, it was sharp, demanding, a spoiled child accustomed to immediate compliance. No, I said. Beck, give him the damn light or we're all going to die in here. Gideon yelled, clutching his leg, his old instincts of siding with Cyrus kicking in out of sheer habit. He's the lead contestant. The network. I swung the beam of light directly into Gideon's eyes. He flinched, blinding himself. The network isn't here, Gideon, I said, my voice steady and cold. Your contract isn't here. Your ratings aren't here. Right now, you are in a subterranean karst system in the middle of an unmapped rainforest. The water level in this tunnel rises at a rate of 4 inches per minute during a tropical flash flood. In 15 minutes, this entire ceiling will be underwater. I shifted the light to point down the narrow, sloping passage leading deeper into the earth. If you want to live, you move when I say move, you step where I say step, and you keep your mouth shut. If you lag behind, I will leave you. If you attempt to touch my gear, I will break your fingers. Am I understood? Mallory nodded violently, shivering. Gideon swallowed hard, looking at me with a sudden, terrified realization. For 3 years, he had treated me like a sullen, difficult commodity to be managed and exploited. He had never seen me in my element. He had never seen the boy who had survived 17 close encounters with the grave. What about him? Mallory whispered, pointing a trembling finger at Cyrus. I didn't turn around. I knew where Cyrus was. I could hear his shallow, uneven breathing. Cyrus can do whatever he wants, I said. He brought 0 gear, 0 intelligence, and 0 survival skills into a fatal environment. He is a walking hazard. You think you're so smart, don't you? Cyrus hissed from the darkness behind the light. You think because you carry around a bag full of knives and bandages, you're better than me? I built an empire, Beck. I have 15 million people who adore me. And none of them are here to carry your corpse, I replied. I turned and began walking into the descending tunnel. Keep up. The tunnel was a claustrophobic nightmare. The ceiling dipped dangerously low in places, forcing us to crouch as wet stalactites brushed against our backs. The water, cold as ice, was already up to our knees. The current was picking up, tugging at our legs, threatening to sweep anyone who lost their footing into the deeper, uncharted sump pits along the cavern floor. Gideon limped painfully behind me, using Mallory for support. Cyrus trailed 20 feet behind them, lingering in the shadows just outside the fringe of my flashlight's beam. I kept my ears tuned to every sound. The rush of water, the creak of limestone under hydraulic pressure, and the distinct, soft rustle of Cyrus's synthetic jacket. I knew Cyrus wasn't done. A man like him, driven by pure, unadulterated vanity and sociopathic pride, could not afford to let me exit this cavern alive. If I made it back to base camp, the recording would end his career, send him to prison, and turn him into an international outcast. His entire illusion would crumble. He didn't just want to survive, he needed me dead before we reached the surface. This was the core of my 18th trial. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind, rattling through the years. The 18th trial will not come from nature, my boy. It will come when nature and human malice align to tear you apart. You will face the dark, and in the dark, the monster will show its true face. When I was 6, it was the broken axle of a school bus. When I was 13, it was rat poison in a birthday cake. When I was 16, it was a malfunctioning gas line in an hotel room. Each time, the world had tried to snuff me out through subtle, lethal turns of fate. But this time, the curse had a human face. Cyrus was the weapon the universe had chosen for my final test. Beck, wait. Mallory gasped, her voice echoing off the wet rock. The water, it's at my waist. I can't touch the bottom. I stopped. We had reached the low point of the cavern system, the sump. The roof of the cave plunged downward, meeting the dark, churned surface of the rising water. Only a tiny, 6-inch pocket of air remained between the water and the jagged ceiling. Beyond this submerged archway lay the ascending chimney that led to the upper ridge and safety. We have to dive, I said, assessing the current. It's a 10-meter siphon. You hold your breath, submerge, pull yourself along the rock wall on the left side, and surface on the other side. It takes 15 seconds. I can't swim. Gideon cried out, clutching a rock ledge in sheer panic. Beck. I can't do it. I'll drown. Please, you have to carry me. If I carry you, we both drown, I said coldly. The current in the siphon is 3 knots. You grab the guide wire I'm about to pull through, or you stay here and float when the water hits the ceiling in 2 minutes. I unhooked a spool of high-visibility, 50-pound Kevlar cord from my tactical harness. I tied one end to a heavy rock anchor near the waterline, then turned to look at the 3 of them. I go first, I said. Once the cord is taut, Mallory goes second. Gideon third. What about me? Cyrus called out from the dark rear of the tunnel. His voice was terrifyingly calm now. I looked past Gideon and Mallory, aiming the beam of light directly onto Cyrus's face. He was holding a jagged, foot-long stalactite he had broken off from the ceiling. The limestone point was sharp as an ice pick, wet and glistening in the white light. You can take your turn, Cyrus, I said softly. If you make it through. Before Gideon or Mallory could react, Cyrus moved. He didn't target me. He targeted Gideon. With a frantic, primal scream, Cyrus lunged forward, grabbing Gideon by his collar and shoving him brutally into the deep, swirling water of the sump pit. Gideon. Mallory screamed. Gideon splashed violently, sinking instantly beneath the dark surface, his arms flailing as the current dragged him toward the submerged archway. Cyrus didn't even look at him. He used the momentum of pushing Gideon to hurl himself at me, raising the limestone spike high above his head, his eyes blazing with pure, murderous psychosis. Die, you miserable freak! Cyrus shrieked. I didn't step back. I had been preparing for physical violence since the moment I stepped into the helicopter. As Cyrus brought the sharp limestone down toward my chest, I dropped my center of gravity, pivoting on my back foot. I caught his wrist with my left hand, absorbing the impact, and slammed the heavy metal casing of my tactical flashlight directly into the side of his knee. A loud, sickening crack echoed through the subterranean chamber. Cyrus let out an ear-splitting howl of agony as his knee hyperextended backward. The limestone spike slipped from his grasp, splashing harmlessly into the water. He collapsed into the knee-deep current, clutching his shattered leg, his face contorting in unbearable pain. My leg. You broke my leg, he screamed, thrashing in the water, his golden boy image reduced to a writhing, hysterical mess. You broke it yourself when you decided to attack me, I said, my pulse barely rising above 70 beats per minute. I grabbed Mallory by her shoulder, pulling her away from the edge. Take the cord. Go. Now. Mallory, paralyzed by fear, looked at Cyrus screaming in the water, then at the rising tide, and finally at me. She grabbed the Kevlar line with white knuckles, took a deep, shuddering breath, and plunged into the dark water beneath the rock archway. The cord pulled taut. 10 seconds passed. 11. 12. Then, 3 sharp tugs. On the line. She was through. I turned back to the sump pit. Gideon had managed to surface near the edge of the archway, his head barely above water, gasping frantically for air, clinging to a rock outcrop. Beck. Help me. Gideon choked out, swallowing mouthfuls of muddy water. I can't reach the line. I stepped down into the deep water, grabbed Gideon by his tactical vest, and slapped the Kevlar cord into his hand. Hold the line. Don't let go. Kick your feet. I shoved him under the archway. The line jerked, vibrated violently for several seconds, and then went slack. Gideon had made it across. Now, it was just me and Cyrus. The water was up to my chest now. The air pocket near the ceiling was down to 4 inches. The subterranean pressure was building, making the air heavy, oxygen deprived, and thick with the smell of ozone and wet earth. Cyrus was dragged by the rising water against the jagged rock wall. His leg hung uselessly beneath him, and his face was deathly pale. The manic energy had vanished, replaced by the absolute, crushing horror of a man who realized his money, his fame, and his charm could not save him from drowning in total dark. Beck. Cyrus whimpered, reaching out a slick, trembling hand toward me. The arrogance was completely gone. He looked like a frightened child. Beck. Please. Don't leave me here. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about everything. Please. I don't want to die in the dark. I stood in the swirling, freezing water, holding the flashlight on his face. This was the moment. The 17 trials had forged me into a weapon of cold, uncompromising survival. The public called me a monster, a sociopath, a miserable freak. I had every reason to turn around, duck under the archway, and leave Cyrus Novak to be consumed by the subterranean river. It would be self-defense. It would be justice. I looked at my watch. 11:57 p.m. 3 minutes until my 18th birthday. 3 minutes until the end of the prophecy. Grab my belt, I said. Cyrus blinked, choked with tears. What? Grab my belt, I repeated, my voice hard as steel. If you let go while we're underwater, you die. I won't turn back for you. Cyrus didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, throwing his arm around my tactical harness, clinging to me like a drowning parasite. I took a final, deep lungful of the stale cavern air, grabbed the Kevlar guide wire with my right hand, and plunged us both into the black, rushing waters of the siphon. The underwater current was a violent, chaotic monster. It slammed us against the razor-sharp limestone walls of the narrow channel. The pressure roared in my ears. Cyrus was a heavy, dead weight dragging behind my waist, his frantic movements threatening to pull us off the guide wire. My lungs began to burn. 5 seconds. 8 seconds. The Kevlar cord scraped violently against my tactical gloves as I dragged both of our body weights against the rushing current. 10 seconds. Suddenly, Cyrus panicked. In his underwater agony, his grip on my harness slipped, his arms thrashing wildly as the current tore him away from my back, sweeping him backward into the pitch-black abyss of the subterranean sump. I felt the sudden loss of weight. Keep going, the voice of survival whispered in my head. You gave him his chance. You fulfilled your duty. Save yourself. 11:58 p.m. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I reached out into the black water with my left hand, blindly lunging into the current. My fingers caught the collar of his high-end technical jacket. I yanked him forward with everything I had, digging my boots into a crevice in the underwater rock and kicked violently toward the faint, glimmering light above. Splash. We burst through the surface of the water, gasping violently for air. We collapsed onto the muddy, ascending incline of the chimney shaft. Cyrus vomited mouthfuls of cave water, weeping uncontrollably, clutching his shattered knee as he lay in the mud. Above us, a jagged crack in the cavern ceiling exposed the night sky. The storm was still raging, but down here, at the base of the chimney, cold, fresh rain was falling on our faces. I hauled myself up the slippery rock incline, dragging my pack behind me, until I reached the wide, grassy plateau of the eastern ridge, high above the flooded valley, high above the roaring mudslides. Mallory and Gideon were sitting under the shelter of a wide overhang, wrapped in emergency foil blankets from my pack. When they saw me emerge, dragging Cyrus onto the grass, they gasped. I collapsed against a moss-covered boulder, resting my head against the cold stone, staring up at the dark, storm-filled sky. My body was battered, bruised, and exhausted to the absolute limit. My hands were bloody beneath my gloves. I pulled off my glove and looked at my tactical wristwatch. The digital display blinked. 12 a.m. July 29th. My 18th birthday. For the first time in 18 years, the heavy, suffocating pressure on my chest, the cold, invisible shadow that had haunted my every waking moment since my grandfather clamped his skeletal fingers around my wrist, simply vanished. There were no fireworks. No divine lights. Just the quiet, profound realization that the prophecy was over. 18 trials. 18 brushes with death. And I was still breathing. I wasn't cursed. I had never been cursed. My grandfather hadn't laid a spell upon me. He had seen the world for what it was, a brutal, unpredictable, hyper-competitive wilderness filled with hidden traps and malicious actors. He had given me a mantle of vigilance, a shield of radical preparation, knowing that only a boy built to endure 18 deaths could survive a world designed to consume him. The gloom was gone. The misery was gone. What remained was pure, unshakable strength. A low sound broke the silence of the ridge. Gideon and Mallory looked over in shock. Cyrus, weeping in the dirt, froze. I was laughing. It wasn't a bitter laugh. It wasn't manic. It was a clear, calm, quiet laugh of absolute freedom. A genuine, radiant smile spread across my face, the first real smile of my life, stretching the cold rain on my cheeks. He's smiling, Mallory whispered, backing away slightly, still terrified of me. Beck? Gideon stammered, his voice trembling. Beck, are you okay? I sat up slowly, wiping the rain and mud from my face, looking down at Gideon and Mallory with eyes that were no longer dark and shadowed, but sharp, bright, and terrifyingly clear. I'm better than okay, Gideon, I said smoothly. I reached into my waterproof canvas pack, pulling out the military spec recording device and my satellite communication hub. The hub's indicator light flickered green. We had reached the high ground. The satellite signal was restored. What are you going to do with that? Gideon asked, staring at the recorder in terror. Beck, if that tape gets out, the network will crumble. Cyrus's career is over. The agency will be destroyed. We can settle this. We can pay you millions. We can give you whatever you want. I looked down at Cyrus, who was shivering in the dirt, looking up at me with terrified, hollow eyes. The human sunshine was broken, his reputation resting entirely on whether I chose to press a button. You still don't get it, do you, Gideon? I said, standing up to my full height. The rain pouring off my shoulders like armor. You thought I was miserable. Because I was failing in your world. I pressed the transmit button on the satellite hub, syncing the recorded audio file directly to every major media server, emergency network, and social media platform connected to the production's broadcast hub. The truth is, I said, watching the upload progress bar hit 100%, I was just waiting for my turn to play. 3 days later. The news storm that swept the globe was unlike anything the entertainment industry had ever seen. The raw, unedited subterranean audio recording, combined with the automated satellite telemetry recovered from Beck's personal gear, had leaked across the internet within an hour of upload. By morning, it was the #1 trending topic in 40 countries. The golden boy, Cyrus Novak, was arrested at the regional hospital the moment His leg was set in a cast, charged with multiple counts of attempted murder, conspiracy, and criminal negligence. His endorsements vanished overnight. His talent agency dropped him within hours. His upcoming blockbuster film was canceled before the week was out. Gideon's agency collapsed under the weight of criminal investigations and lawsuits. The production company behind the survival show was dismantled by regulators. And then, there was Beck. The most miserable man on the internet had become an overnight legend. The public, horrified by their own gullibility, watched in awe as raw footage from the cavern rescue was released by search and rescue teams. The footage showed Beck, calm, precise, unyielding, single-handedly guiding two terrified survivors, and his own prospective murderer out of a flooded death trap. Media outlets begged for interviews. Millions of followers flooded his abandoned social media accounts, pleading for his return, painting fan art, offering millions in sponsorships. He ignored every single one of them. In a quiet, sunlit coastal town 3,000 miles away from the noise of Hollywood, Beck sat on the porch of a small wooden cottage overlooking the ocean. His canvas survival pack rested on the table beside him, neatly packed, impeccably maintained. His phone buzzed on the table. A text message appeared on the screen. It was from his ex-girlfriend. Beck. I saw the news. I saw what happened. I'm so sorry for everything I said. I didn't understand what you were carrying. Can we talk? Please? Beck looked at the message for a long moment. He didn't feel anger. He didn't feel satisfaction. He felt nothing at all for the past that had tried to weigh him down. He tapped the screen, permanently deleting the contact, and set the phone down. The ocean breeze blew across the porch, carrying the crisp, clean scent of salt and morning dew. Beck stood up, walked to the edge of the railing, and breathed in deeply. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his grandfather's old pocket watch, and clicked it open. Inside, inscribed in worn silver, were 6 words. Survive the dark. Own the dawn. Beck smiled, a bright, effortless, indestructible smile, and closed the watch. The trials were over. The world was waiting. And for the first time in his life, Beck was ready to live.